In the darkest days of the Second World War, when fear ruled over Europe and millions of innocent lives were being swallowed by hatred, there lived a man whose greatest weapon was neither a gun nor an army. He wore no military uniform, commanded no battalion, and held no political power. Instead, he carried a simple brown Franciscan habit, a quiet smile, and an unshakable faith. His name was Maximilian Kolbe, and although history remembers the dictators who sought to conquer the world through violence, it also remembers one humble priest who proved that courage could be stronger than fear. Long before the war reached Poland, Maximilian Kolbe had dedicated his entire life to serving others. As a Franciscan friar, he believed that faith should never remain inside the walls of a church. He founded magazines, established one of the largest Catholic publishing centers in Europe, and even embraced the new technology of radio to spread messages of hope. Thousands of people admired him, not because he sought fame, but because he genuinely believed that every human being, regardless of their background, deserved compassion, dignity, and love. Everything changed on the 1st of September 1939. At dawn, German forces crossed the Polish border, beginning what would become the deadliest conflict in human history. Cities that had once echoed with children's laughter were suddenly filled with explosions, smoke, and fear. Families fled their homes with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. The peaceful world Maximilian had known disappeared almost overnight. While countless people desperately searched for safety, Kolbe made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Rather than closing the gates of his monastery to protect those inside, he opened them even wider. Refugees poured in from every direction. Catholics, Jews, mothers carrying infants, elderly men who had lost everything, and frightened children all found shelter within the monastery walls. For Maximilian, suffering had no nationality, and compassion required no permission. His actions did not go unnoticed. The Nazi authorities closely watched anyone who offered assistance to those they considered enemies of the regime. Kolbe refused to remain silent, refused to abandon those in need, and refused to compromise his beliefs. In February 1941, the Gestapo arrived at the monastery. Without resistance, Maximilian was arrested and taken away, fully aware that he might never return. A few months later, he arrived at Auschwitz. By then, Auschwitz had already become a place where hope seemed impossible. The towering fences of barbed wire, the watchtowers, and the endless rows of barracks reminded every prisoner that life had little value in the eyes of their captors. Upon arrival, Maximilian was stripped of his identity and assigned prisoner number 16670. Like everyone else, he endured forced labor, hunger, exhaustion, and constant humiliation. Yet something about him remained untouched. Even in the middle of unimaginable suffering, he continued comforting others. Those who survived later recalled that Kolbe would quietly share his meager bread with prisoners who were weaker than himself. At night, when despair threatened to consume everyone, he encouraged men to pray, reminding them that while their bodies could be imprisoned, their faith could never be chained. In a place designed to destroy human dignity, he became a living reminder that kindness could still exist. Then came the day that would forever secure his place in history. In July 1941, a prisoner escaped from Auschwitz. As punishment, the camp's deputy commander ordered that 10 men be selected at random to die of starvation. It was a brutal warning meant to discourage any future escape attempts. One by one, terrified prisoners were pulled from the line. Among them was a Polish sergeant named Francisek Gajuniczek. Overwhelmed with grief, he reportedly cried out that he would never see his wife and children again. The camp fell silent. Then, something extraordinary happened. From the ranks of prisoners, Maximilian Kolbe stepped forward. Approaching the German officer with remarkable calm, he made an unexpected request. He asked if he could take the condemned man's place. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to stop. No one had ever volunteered to enter the starvation bunker. The officer stared at the frail priest standing before him. There was no anger in his eyes, no desperation, only quiet determination. Surprisingly, the request was granted. Francisek Gajuniczek returned to the line, while Maximilian Kolbe walked toward the underground bunker, where death patiently awaited. The starvation cell was intended to break both body and spirit, yet witnesses later recalled that instead of hearing screams, guards often heard prayers. Instead of despair, they heard hymns. Day after day, the prisoners looked to Kolbe for strength, and somehow, in the middle of one of history's darkest places, he transformed a chamber of death into a place of peace. Weeks passed. One after another, the prisoners died. Maximilian was among the last still alive. Eventually, the guards ended his life with a lethal injection on the 14th of August 1941. He was 47 years old. The man whose place he had taken survived the war. For decades afterward, Francisek Gajuniczek traveled around the world telling people about the priest who had willingly sacrificed his own life so that a stranger could return home. Without Maximilian's decision, Francisek believed he would have died in Auschwitz, and his family would never have seen him again. Years later, the world recognized what had happened inside that underground bunker. In 1982, Pope John Paul II canonized Maximilian Kolbe, calling him the martyr of charity. Yet perhaps no title could fully capture the meaning of his sacrifice. History often celebrates those who change nations through power or conquest, but sometimes the greatest victories are won not with weapons, but with love. Maximilian Kolbe never defeated Hitler on the battlefield. He never commanded an army or led a revolution. Instead, he demonstrated something far more enduring, that even in humanity's darkest hour, compassion could overcome hatred, selflessness could triumph over cruelty, and one ordinary man, guided by extraordinary faith, could leave behind a legacy that no dictatorship could ever erase.